This is our project on additive negative shape. I'm going to start by selecting an object with strong negative shapes. I've picked this plant, which sadly isn't in the best of shape, but will be great for drawing negative space. I've set it up against a light background because the plant is fairly dark and I want to clearly be able to see my negative spaces.
Let's look at how to use a viewfinder. Here we have our subject, our plant, and I'm going to take my hands, 1, 2. We all have this built-in viewfinder. You can pull it apart a little bit if you want to create a little more of a rectangle instead of a square. Let's find an interesting composition on our plant by moving our hands around. If I zoom in, you can see I start to get closer and closer and closer, and less shows up in my viewfinder. If I pull away, I get more in there, and I'm able to see a larger section of my plant and maybe get a little more of an interesting composition.
We're going to begin with thumbnail sketches. Thumbnail sketches come from the concept that the sketch is as big as a thumb. We're going to make them slightly larger, and we're going to work in our 9x12 sketchbook. I'm going to demo with a Sharpie, but you will likely use a regular pencil, a drawing pencil if you have one. I'd suggest an HB or a 2H. You're also going to use your ruler, your eraser, your pencil sharpener. If you have a Sharpie, feel free to use one as well. I'm going to use one because it will be easier for you all to see. Now you're going to measure out using your ruler and your Sharpie or pencil, and you're going to keep it consistent with the shape of your 18x24 drawing paper, which is where we will be doing this project. So I've made these 2¼ by 3 inches, going to match up well with my 18x24 picture plane. All right, I've selected my first composition with my viewfinder, and now using my Sharpie, I'm creating my silhouette outline. I'm going to go back and fill in all of the negative space with the Sharpie, so I end up with this beautiful white silhouette. On to number 2. So let's talk about additive negative shape versus subtractive negative shape. It's called additive because of the way we're drawing. Instead of removing the negative shape with the eraser, we are adding it with the pencil or the Sharpie. Here you can see I've done the contour outline of all of my negative space. Keep in mind all of the things that we've considered so far with composition. Open form versus closed form. What is going to be more interesting in this case? Keep in mind balance. How much negative space is part of the image versus how much positive space? Thumbnails are a great way to work your drawing out before you go to the big paper. A thumbnail should take you around 10 minutes to do. It might take a little longer in the beginning. So while we're looking at these, and I'm working on my 4th one, I'm going to discuss the 3 I've already done. Number 1 feels kind of blobby. The composition isn't very interesting, it feels pretty static, and there's really a lack of interesting negative space. So I'm going to cross option 1 out. Option 2 is really interesting, but it is extremely intricate and is going to take me a long time. 3 is a little unbalanced. 4, however, is coming along really well. There's asymmetry by one side being heavier on negative shape and one side being heavier on positive shape. We also have balance present because there's about the same amount of negative space as positive space. I also know I have a time constraint, so I only have so much time allotted to do this specific demonstration video. That means I'm not going to pick the hardest one. I'm going to pick one that is strong, but also that I know I can get done in the time that I have. So number 4 is my winner. You can see I've set up my page like we did with our small negative shape drawing or subtractive negative shape drawing. I'm going to show you some of it in real time so you can see how slowly you're going to be working. Really take your time to get that careful contour outline of your negative shape. For materials, we're using our large 18 by 24 drawing paper or bond paper. I've used my drawing tape, masking tape, or drafting tape. I'm also using a charcoal pencil, and I've opted to use a 2B here because it's a little bit lighter, and I want my initial line to be light in case I mess up. I have a kneaded eraser handy, as well as a pencil sharpener. It might take you a full hour or more to get your contour line done. Once you've completed your contour outline, you can go back in and you can draw in your negative shapes. Sometimes you can get lost doing those negative shapes, so you'll see I have gone and put a few darker marks just to reference where those negative shapes are. You can see I've ripped out a piece of newsprint and taped it over the bottom half of my drawing. I'm just leaving exposed the part that I'm working on now so that the bottom part doesn't get covered with charcoal dust. I want to try and keep my whites as white as possible and my blacks as black as possible. I'm going in first with my compressed charcoal. You might have the alpha color, you might have the generals. Pick something soft, maybe something in a 4B or a 6B if you have it. It's going to be hard to get right up to the edge with that compressed charcoal, so you are also going to need a charcoal pencil. And I suggest you use a blending stick. If you didn't get a blending stick, you can use a Q-tip instead. You can see here I've gone in and I've done the edges in the charcoal pencil, and then I've gone back and blended with the blending stick. I've moved my paper down again. Now make sure you put a piece of tape very carefully across. You don't want to put it too much on the paper in case it rips the paper when you take it up. But that will prevent the dust from falling down into the bottom part of your drawing. You'll notice that your hands will look like a coal miner's within 5 seconds. Okay, you can see here I'm using about a 4B charcoal pencil. I encourage you to use something soft and slightly darker, more of a 4B or a 6B for your charcoal pencil. I believe you guys have a 4B. So you can go back in, outline, and fill in a little bit with that charcoal pencil. You'll see now I'm using a blending stump. If you didn't get the blending stumps, you can use a Q-tip. Or you can just use a little piece of tissue paper or paper towel in a tiny little ball or twist it into a little nub. And you're going to go in and blend with the blending stump. Remember, you're using compressed charcoal to do the large negative spaces. You want to make sure they're really opaque and velvet black. This might take a couple of layers and blending with both your hand and with the blending stump. Throughout this drawing, you've seen me smudge or blend the charcoal just using my hand and my fingertips. If your hands are particularly dry, you may want to wash them really well once or twice through the process of drawing, just to get them a little bit wet and a little bit softer. The oils in your hands, or even a tiny bit of moisture from washing them, is going to help that charcoal blend. Your hands, of course, will be filthy by the end of this. And if you prefer to use a rag or a paper towel, you can. However, that lack of oil and that lack of moisture in the rag or paper towel is going to make it harder to get it really black and opaque. Throughout that I keep putting a piece of white sketchbook paper up against the drawing and holding my hand over it as I draw. This helps prevent smudging, especially when your hands are dirty. If you're going over a white area, having a piece of paper there is a really helpful barrier. You can use a piece of computer paper, notebook paper. You've just got this big pad of newsprint. I would encourage you to rip a piece out and cut it up into smaller pieces. As you near the end, you go back through your white areas with your kneaded eraser and pick up any black dust that's managed to make its way onto your white positive shapes. When you're done, you can take off the tape. Remember, peeling away from the paper so it doesn't rip. Do this very carefully. And you can see that my additive negative shape drawing is complete.